What's the creepiest true story that happened to you or someone you know? Serious. When I was about 8 years old, my neighbor filmed me in secret. I was trying to be a good kid and was helping with the laundry. Our dryer was broken, so we were using a clothesline outside. I was busy hanging up the wet laundry when the neighbor boy yelled to me, "Hey, I would go inside if I were you." What? I was confused. "You should go inside. My dad is recording you." I was super confused because when he said recording you, I thought he meant with a tape recorder and I wasn't saying anything. Before I could respond, his dad started yelling at him, "Get inside, you little sucker, before I beat the crap out of you." That's when I saw him with his camcorder behind some trees. I didn't know what to do. One of our new kittens ran over to me and started biting my ankles trying to play, so I used that as an excuse to pick it up and go inside. That kid was a real bro. Somebody mailed my friend a bunch of pictures of his wife just going about her day. Some of them were taken through windows of their home. Police were called and everything, but nothing ever came of it. They actually moved because of it. Imagine, your friend hired an agent to find out if his wife is cheating. The agent did not find anything, but gave him an envelope with his pics as proof of work. Wife finds this envelope and asks, "What this is?" "Oh, I don't know, it was in the mail like that." He is living a lie ever since. Context: my mom's college boyfriend became her stalker after she left his awful, abusive butt back in the mid-80s. Several years ago, just before the last Harry Potter movie came out, my mom and I were marathoning the other 7 movies, and at about 1 AM the phone rings. Normally we don't answer. We figure if it's important they'll leave a message, but a call that late at night is probably urgent. Mom answers and almost immediately her face changes and she tells me, "LVHQ, go wake up your father." Crap. I've never seen my mom this scared. I run upstairs and get him. Back downstairs she's still on the phone and I have no idea what's going on. Dad has some words with the caller and we hug it out in the kitchen. This is when I found out my mom had a stalker, despite him being silent for years, and their whole breakup happening halfway across the country. He somehow found us, said he'd driven by our house, complimented the neighborhood. Freaks me out to this day, wondering how much he knows about us, and if I've ever talked to him unwittingly. Stalking is one of the things that creeps me out the most. I've seen a few shows about stalkers and it never fails to freak me the heck out. I can't even imagine living with one. I hope everything's okay. I was only 4 when this happened. Was playing outside with my siblings and neighbors, and while they're busy playing, a lady approached me and took me to her place, a nearby neighborhood. After a while, everybody was freaking out and they started looking for me everywhere. This lady was severely depressed. Her husband left her after their son died. He couldn't handle her depression apparently. She took me to her place, fed me and gave me tons of candy for a couple days. She also made me wear her deceased son pajamas. At some point, she took me to buy some candy from the store. The store owner knew her, so he reported that to the police. She didn't hurt me at all. The doctor even said I was well fed. I always think of her and pray she's in a better place now. Even tried to go visit her when I was a college student. Her house was sold and she moved away apparently. Whoa, that is crazy. So you were legit kidnapped. That's probably the absolute luckiest kidnapping scenario ever. I was stalked by a 40-plus-year-old man from the ages of 10 till 14. My parents told me about it when I was 13. I was unaware, but they were. He had been following me to school. He had been mailing me things, taking pictures of me, and sending my parents threatening messages in all sorts of ways. When I was 19, I was visiting my grandmother in Indiana. Unfortunately, she ended up in the hospital, so my mom and I took turns staying with her. One morning I was sleeping at my grandmother's house when I woke up to her front storm door slamming. I sat up and realized there was a chair next to me that wasn't there the night before. I got up and went to the front door. The main actual door was wide open and only the storm door was closed. A man was walking across the lawn, his back to me, normal walking. For some reason I wasn't afraid. I also wasn't wearing my glasses, so I kind of assumed this guy was a postal worker. I didn't put the chair by the bed thing together until later, when the toilet seat slammed down and scared the crap out of me. But why was the toilet seat up? I am a girl. My mom's a girl. TLDR, some random dude peed in my grandmother's house and watched me sleep maybe. On a warm summer night, my wife and I were in bed reading with the windows open. After dark, we heard someone nearby shouting loudly, maybe a block away in our residential neighborhood. The words were mostly hard to understand, but at least once quite distinctly, "Help me, I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding." After a minute or so it trailed off. I couldn't see anything out any window. My wife really didn't want me to go out to check it out. Both our hearts were pounding like crazy. Obviously someone was hurt, but was there still danger? So I called the local police and explained. In a few minutes a cop car drove by in the direction of the shouting. A few minutes after that I saw policemen with a flashlight chasing someone across a nearby yard. I checked to make sure all the doors were locked. After that, nothing happened for what felt like a really long time. Finally we called the police back to see what was up. Turns out it was just a local teen, drunk, trying to talk to the neighborhood girl who recently dumped him. At some point, trying to get her attention, he broke a window and cut his hand. When the police showed up, he ran, because he was drunk and didn't want to get busted. So much less scary than the stories we had been spinning in our heads. Finally we were able to sleep. There has always been rumors that if you travel far enough back into a certain part of my town, you will reach this hidden community filled with these crazy people who hate outsiders. The road back there is very easy to find and travel on, which made me pretty skeptical right away. So one day, a friend and I drove back there in my truck. I had looked at the place on Google Earth and it didn't seem to be more than a small group of ranch-style homes. Well, crap went south pretty quick. The first house we passed had this weird army of dogs running around. They all start going batshit crazy, so we just sped up, but that was like the warning bell because people started coming out of every freaking house and they were all yelling crap at us. My friend and I both start freaking out, speed past and try to find the first place to turn around and get out. As I'm making my U-turn, rocks are starting to hit my truck and one guy was walking straight from his garage with what looked like a shotgun. He didn't shoot, but I did have some big dents on my truck from the rocks. We hauled butt out of there and I had to lie to my dad and tell him that crap flew out of a car in front of me on the freeway and hit me, causing the dents. I've posted this before. Staying in a motel with my wife one night. She falls asleep really quickly, but for me it takes a while to drift off to sleep. So I'm lying there in the dark for a while and I distinctly hear a voice coming from somewhere in the room quietly, though just above a whisper, say, "I think they're asleep now." Immediate fright response. I bolt out of bed, turn on all the lights and start frantically searching the room. I look in the bathroom behind the shower curtain, under the bed, nothing. It's a one-room motel room. The door is bolted shut. There's nobody else in the room. My wife is now freaked because of my actions. What I experienced is called a hypnagogic hallucination, and not an uncommon experience during the initial stages of sleep. But if I had not known what that was, I would have thought the room was haunted. This happened about 3 years ago or so. I was sitting in the kitchen, and it was around 10 PM or so. I heard a really loud thump in the basement. I live alone with 2 dogs, so any sound is somewhat frightening to me. So, as I'm walking down the stairs to the basement, I hear the thumping again, in an oddly rhythmic pattern. I creak open the door into the basement bedroom, and I see my dog is just ramming his head and body into the wall, over and over. I can't explain to you how shockingly unnatural looking it was. It looked like he was controlled or something. I called him over, and he stopped and came upstairs with me. 3 hours later, I hear the thumping again. I get out of bed again, however. When I went down to check it, it was my other dog that was ramming his head into the wall. It was like he was possessed. Scared the cheese out of me. Since then, nothing like that has happened. But what an unexplainable event. I was that creepy guy once. My family has a cottage on an island on a lake in northwestern Ontario, Canada. It is a unique lake in that it is made up of hundreds of small islands. Several of them have cottages on them. All in all, it is an amazing place with a rich history, abandoned gold mines, historical rock paintings, and even has a couple of old World War II POW camps. When I was younger, I used to go fishing in my 16-foot outboard putt-putt boat, then would explore bits of the lake looking for adventure. Once, I stopped at an area what looked like a stream was draining into the lake. I pulled the boat up on the beach and started following a small creek, hoping to find a lake within the island and maybe a place to fish. I was wearing a long-sleeved bush jacket and beat-up jeans because the branches will cut you up and the bugs will get what's left of you. I found a long piece of driftwood and used it as a walking stick as I slowly made my way along this mostly dried-up creek bed. I got to a clearing where I could see the other side of the island that I was on and went down a hill to get to the shore to get a drink from the lake as I had been hiking for about an hour and my water bottle was empty. I was a sight. Covered in burrs, wearing a fishing hat and a small backpack, I came upon a group of campers that surely thought they would be the only people around for miles. I didn't mean to sneak up on them, but it happened so quickly. A woman screamed, then another, and I, brain-addled from lack of water and general exhaustion, screamed back. Then I turned and disappeared into the bushes, ran up the hill and followed the creek back to my boat. I'm sure they thought I was a hermit or something along those lines. I probably ruined their camping for a while. I'm sorry, but picturing them screaming and you screaming back as you run away is hilarious. When I was a little girl, my brother and I shared a room. We were 15 months apart, and in our room we had a wood divider down the middle because we fought so much. Anyways, I was maybe between 4-6. I can't remember exact age, and it was Easter time. Actually, it was the Saturday night before Easter Sunday and I heard something in our room. I thought it was the Easter Bunny, so I peeked out of my covers and I swear to this day it was the real Easter Bunny. I saw a black vest with chains and a pocket watch hanging down and some glasses hanging out of the other top pocket. He walked over and I shot my head back under the covers. He sat down on my bed. I became very scared. My older sisters had said the Easter Bunny kills bad kids and kids who try to peek at him, and I was definitely a little crap either way, and pulled the covers taut and could feel him lean over me and get very close to my face. I peeked out again with one eye and I saw an eye staring back at me, then a pillow go over my head. I slowly turned my head to the side because I couldn't breathe and didn't know what was going on, but I got a breath and held it. In my little pea brain head I had a voice that just said hold it in like I'm playing a game. Well, I did. Then the Easter Bunny got up off the bed. I could hear him and the chains on his vest rattle as he walked, then back through the window. I was so scared I didn't know what to do. I just laid there under the covers with the sheet pulled taut and the pillow on top of my head and eventually fell asleep, I guess. I honestly don't remember if I tried to wake my parents or not. I just know I woke up in my bed the next morning, thinking it was all a dream. I told my sisters and brother that the Easter Bunny came and sat on my bed last night as we went through our Easter candy and got ready to go for our Easter egg hunt. My mom and dad overheard, and the next thing I know they called the police and there were footprints outside of mine and my brother's bedroom window, and the screen had been ripped off and the window slightly slid open. Years later I found out a sicko had been trying to hurt me to get back at my dad. He was a biker. My dad was too. Henceforth the black leather vest and chains, and apparently that wasn't the only time he broke into our house, and that's not the only time he tried to hurt me or talk to me. He used to call and talk to me all the time apparently. I don't remember any of it but that one incident. Well, this girl I used to be in class with found out today that there's some random dude out there who tattooed a picture of her face on his leg. She doesn't know who he is, just that he tagged her on Instagram with a picture of the tattoo. I'd feel like it's pretty dang creepy to have someone somewhere in the world walk around with your face on his leg. That's probably not going to be the last she hears from him, unfortunately. I should preface this by saying that I am an overweight, unattractive woman, so this story is even creepier for me. Back when I was 19 I worked part-time at the local smoke shop, weekends and evening closing, 7 PM shifts. A few weeks after I started, this older guy, I think in his late 40s to early 50s, starts hitting on me and won't stop no matter how many times I say no. Even if he wasn't old enough to be my father, he looked like a rimhead and had the hygiene of one, in addition to his inability to accept the word no as an answer. This goes on for a couple of weeks. Him coming in every time I'm working to see me, even when I switched days with the other girl that worked there to try and shake him. She was a bit older with an IJF attitude, and even she was weirded out by this guy. Manager finally meets him when she was covering my shift after a car accident and bans him for inappropriate behavior after he started asking her where I was and if I was okay after the accident no one had told him about. I come back to work a couple of days later, relieved that the guy is banned and that I can call the cops if he shows up. When my shift ends that night, I notice a van at the store across the street. This was odd because all the stores on that block closed at 5 and it was past 7 when I finished up my closing duties. I get in my truck and start on my way home and the van follows me. Naturally I was freaking out, so I called my mom and hurried home, jumped out and ran to the patio where my dog and parents were waiting for me, ready to call the cops. He must have seen the cars in the driveway and that I didn't live alone because he only pulled into the driveway a few feet before backing out and taking off. We did call a sheriff's deputy we know and he checked on me from time to time at the store after closing and sometimes escorted me home for a few weeks after that, which I was immensely grateful for. After that night, though, I never saw the creepy guy again. I'm just glad I didn't live alone or who knows what sort of Buffalo Bill type situation I would have been in. Not to take away from the creepy, but I've heard what you should do in that situation is drive to a police or fire station, or any populated area, like a truck stop, gas station, etc. So you're among other people and the follower doesn't know where you live. About a year and a half ago I was home alone for the day and decided I didn't want to make myself lunch, so I went out and came right back. I was only gone maybe 20-25 minutes. So I come back, walk in my front door and see that my dog is outside, in the backyard, staring at me from the other side of the sliding glass door. I think for a second that's weird and then decide I must have just left her outside on accident. I get up to the door and realize it's partially opened. Now I know I definitely didn't do that. I call my father to see if he came home from work. He tells me he didn't, but he's on his way. I proceed to grab a huge knife and call my best friend. As I'm on the phone with her, going from room to room to make sure there's no one there, my dad arrives home and we both come to the conclusion that yes, we were robbed. I call the cops and have to come to the conclusion that whoever robbed us was just waiting for me to leave. I was gone for too short a period of time for it to be a coincidence. I'm so glad your dog was unharmed. Friend was sleeping at home during summer when his housemates were away. He slept with the bedroom door open, which is horrifying enough, but woke up when he heard burglars walking up the stairs. He didn't do anything and just laid there terrified, and one of them closed the bedroom door. When they left he found a knife in the kitchen that didn't belong to anyone in the house. I'm a loss adjuster, insurance assessor, and there is one claim that will forever stick with me as being unexplained and creepy. The client was a divorced lady in her mid-late 50s. She lived alone, with her 18-year-old son moving out about 6 months earlier after he finished high school. She had gone through a divorce in the last 5 years and once her son finished school she decided to reinvent herself, going to university in a town about 300 km away. This meant that she was leaving home on a Monday morning and not getting back until the Friday night, as she had a rented flat near uni. Anyway, one Friday night she gets back to home and finds the gate locked, as usual, but her keys weren't working in the lock. She thought that perhaps it had rained or the lock was jammed, so she jumped the fence and walked to the house. Guess what? None of her keys worked there either. She immediately called the police and a locksmith. Entry was gained to the house and that's where it got really weird. Most things were where they should be, but just a bit off. Someone had clearly been in the house and was messing with her. Things that ended up being part of the list of damages were: all locks had been changed, all photos in frames on the wall had one person cut out of them and had been rehung. Not the same person, either. It might be mum in one photo, dad in another, etc. All spoons had been stolen, as in, you'd open the cutlery drawer and there were no spoons. Still had all knives etc. This wasn't just the kitchen either. Her picnic set in the storeroom had its spoons taken too. Her television had been turned around to face the wall. All of the goods in her fridge were now in the freezer, and goods in the freezer now, in a stinking defrosted mess, in the fridge. All the water tanks, about 200,000 gallons of water, had been drained. Her bedroom had been rearranged, but my personal favorite was the son's bedroom. As above, the kid had moved out a few months earlier but, like most of us do, left some stuff behind. In the wardrobe where there should have been 5 high school uniforms, here in Australia we wear uniforms to school, had been replaced with 5 high school dresses. That's right, the boys' uniforms had been stolen and replaced with dresses. In the end the insurance company paid a heck of a lot of money to fix up the house, but the woman never lived there again. The police ended up not finding out what had happened, but were able to prove it wasn't the customer, her family, or anyone they knew. Last I heard, she was in a mental facility because the entire thing sent her nuts. She'd go looking for something months later and find some more tampering. This is utterly horrifying. That poor woman. So, about 3 years ago during summer, I had a habit of staying up late playing games with my window open. This usually wasn't a problem as my neighborhood was usually quiet. However, one night someone knocked on my window around midnight. When I went over to investigate, I heard someone calling out for help in Spanish. My family was up and I assumed it was one of my neighbors, so I went outside. Once I saw the person, I immediately knew something was off course. 1. This wasn't one of my neighbors, and 2. This person's clothing was ripped and they didn't have shoes on. Turns out the person was a she. I thought it was a young boy at first, and she only spoke Spanish. I tried communicating with my basic Spanish skills to no avail. Eventually I went inside to ask my parents for help. We ended up calling my uncle, who was fluent in Spanish. He helped translate and told us that she said she was being human trafficked from Honduras and needed help. She wanted either $500 or a car tula. We couldn't give either and offered to call the police, but she seemed adamant that the police didn't get involved. After this bombshell, my family went inside and decided to just call the police. After making this decision, we wanted to check up on her at least. But as my mom and I were walking outside, we saw a car with no headlights pull onto our street. We immediately noped back inside. Once we felt that the coast was clear, we went back out and the lady was gone. We called the cops and filed a report, but we never heard anything more. Sounds like a damsel in distress type scam, asking for money and insisting the police don't get involved. I was getting used to a new laptop I had gotten around 2 months ago. The little green light next to the camera turned on shortly after I got it and signed into it, and it was always on, even after I closed my camera apps and before I turned them on. My dad came into my room one night to talk to me before I went to sleep, while I was listening to music. Just as he was leaving, he said, "Do you know your camera is on?" I said, "Number. How do you know?" And he said, "The light is on." I looked directly at the light, and then at the camera, and for the first time, it turned off. And that's why my whole family tapes up their laptop cameras unless they are using them. I used to stick a little gum eraser on mine. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.